Hello, friend. Welcome back to my channel KBS Technocraft. Today, we are going to understand the real-time use cases for different kind of trigger. As each Azure function trigger type has its own strength and use cases, choosing the right trigger depends on the specific need and architecture for your application. So we'll go most commonly used triggers one by one, and we'll try to understand what are the use cases where we can use that kind of trigger, because most of the programmer, when we develop a Azure function, they do not actually know in which scenario we can use what kind of Azure function. Most of us just try to read out the trigger name and try to use it. Some of the scenario you have to think in functional point of view based on our operation, transactions, and then we decide which kind of trigger we can use it. So let's go one by one. HTTP trigger. So let's understand what is HTTP trigger. So it runs a function when HTTP request is received, support get and post, put and delete, and other HTTP methods. So it's just like a REST APIs which works or runs as a serverless. So basically, it's a common use case for using that. Creating REST API is a serverless. Either you are using a webhooks and processing from web form or mobile devices, right? So uh, it's ideal for building serverless API that can be accessed via standard HTTP method. Also, webhooks used to process the data from third-party services that send HTTP requests when specific events occurs. Okay, so processing from web form, what does it mean? Automatically handle the submission and integrate the other services. Other services. So let's consider you are having a application uh, of which want to communicate to a different set of APIs or third party APIs or perform some operation. In that case, what we will do, we will go for HTTP trigger. So example scenario, if you see building a serverless web API where you do not want to create a web application and a web apps and API apps where you want to deploy your API, you just want to use a serverless API, processing incoming data from web forms or mobile application, integrating the third party services that sends the HTTP requests. Let's move on the next. Timer trigger. It runs function are a predefined schedule. For example, if you want to run perform a certain task in a certain time interval, right? So in that case, you can use the time trigger. So commonly used case, as name suggested, you can use it for schedule tasks, maintenance activity, periodic data processing. So for example of this is that daily database backup, weekly report generation, hourly data aggregation, right? So uh, what does it do basically? It's any kind of task which you want to run as a background. So runs background task on a fixed schedule, such as creating logs or updating static maintenance activity, automate a routine maintenance task like database cleanup and other. Okay, right? And also it's periodically data processing kind of mechanism where you want to aggregate and process the data regular intervals such as hourly or daily basis report generation, right? So that kind of scenario we can use the timer trigger. Queue trigger, it runs a function when a new message is added to a like Azure storage queue. So whenever, let's say, consider you are having a scenario when you want to perform certain task or certain action item based on a message inserted in the queue. For example, let's say consider you are having two databases which you want to synchronize, right, for the each insert operations, right? So whenever you inserting a data in the database one, then you will be pushing a message into the Azure storage queue, and then you will have queue trigger which will listen that message and then try to push or create the data into the second databases. Okay, so in microservices scenario, we most of the cases we use for data synchronization, right? So common use cases, as I explained, it used for asynchronous processing, decoupling components, right? And reliable message processing scenario. Example scenarios are, as I have explained it, processing order messaging from e-commerce site, handling user sign up notification, processing IoT device data. All right. So these are the major scenario when we basically use for Q trigger, right? So what does it do basically? It's a handle tasks that do not need to be processed immediately, improving application more responsive. Also it support the application to decouple it, right, separate the different part of system to make it more scalable and maintainable. For example, if you have any e-commerce site, you have a ordering, you have a like adding to cart, either you are having, right, your payment gate system. So like each system will communicate to different microservices, and then as an synchronization for these data are very much needed. So in those kind of scenarios, we can go for the queue triggers, right? Service bus trigger. So service bus trigger is also very much similar to Azure bus triggers, right? Queue triggers. So run a function when a message is added to Azure bus queue or topic. Support advanced messaging scenario like session and dead letter queue. So what is dead letter? So for example, whenever there is a certain retry mechanism are there for each messaging system. So what happens if a message comes in the queue after three attempts or four attempts or a given interval, right, given number of retry, that message is still, if it's not been able to process it, then that message will go into the dead letter queue. So what are the common use cases? Basically, enterprise messaging, event driven architecture, complex workflow. So what is enterprise messaging? So it's basically handle high throughput, reliable messaging scenario, typical enterprise application. So event driven architecture basically is a respond to event in real time, facilitating decoupling the system, right? And complex system like basically manage multiple step business process that involve multiple services and components, right? So let's move to next one. Event hub trigger runs a function when event is received in a Azure Event Hub designed for high throughput event streaming. For example, if you want to perform certain action or certain operation to be done whenever a message, all right, or event is received into the Azure Event Hub. In that case, we will use Event Hub trigger. So, what are the common use cases for this? Is like real-time analytics, data analytics, stream processing, right? You have a video streaming or stream processing, telemetry and logging kind of mechanism. When you are having this kind of use cases, you do that. So, example like as we have discussed, right? Analyzing click stream data and website, processing telemetry data into the IoT device so that that IoT device can use it, real time fraud detection in financial transactions. So these are very important, all right, important operations which can be, or scenario can be implemented or can be solved by using event hub trigger. So real-time data analytics means analyzing data stream in the real time for insight and actionable information, right, that it can be done. And stream processing means, what does it means? That processing high volume of event stream from application to IoT devices and other sources, right? Telemetry and logging, what does it means? Is that collecting and process telemetry data for monitoring and analysis. For example, any of the services, web application, it used to log those data, right? And it's required if further analysis whenever issue happen, or you want to check that application performance and other stuff, right? You analyze that how many times this transaction is retrying and other stuff. So in those kind of scenario, we use that, right? Telemetry and logging. Let's move on the Cosmos, right? As the name suggested, right, runs a function when there are changes, insert, update, delete in Azure Cosmos DB, ideal for NoSQL database. So basically, whenever, let's say, consider you are having a uh, Cosmos DB database where you are having you are using some kind of CQRS pattern where you are having two replication of the data. In that case, right, you can use this Cosmos DB trigger if you are storing your operational data into the Azure Cosmos DB and you want to sync multiple databases. So what you do that you will be using this Cosmos DB trigger whenever a insert update delete operation happen. We can call this Azure function, and it can be take a action on those. For example, if new record has been created, similar because the other database which we are having a replicated database, we can do the same operation in that database in real time, so that the others component or application who are using that particular database, it will be synchronized, right? That is one thing. So common use cases is real-time data processing, data synchronization, event driven architecture, right? Whenever we are using this, so simple scenarios like synchronizing data between Cosmos DB and other data sources, right? A real-time notification of changes in the database, right? For example, if you want to send some notification or email or some kind of notification in different format to end user whenever there is a insert update delete operation performed in your database, basically into the Cosmos database, we can use it. And whenever you are building a reactive system that depends on data changes, we can use this, right? Okay, let's see a blob, right? So a blob storage a trigger. So let's say consider a blob storage. Whenever a file get added or deleted from a blob storage, you want to perform some actions, right? Some kind of upload, download kind of scenario, right? Whenever a folder get file uploaded, you want to process it, and because the processing takes longer duration, you do not want to hold that operation and do it from your web application or mobile application. In that case, this what we will use, that we will put that file, and then there will be a blob storage trigger which keep watching that particular blob storage, basically that container and the blob storage location, and then it will process it. So it runs a function when a new blob created or updated in Azure blob storage container. So in which common use cases basically we can use it is the file processing, image or video processing, data integration, right? So basically, uh, the file processing means automatically handle file upload such as image or document, right, for further processing. uh, Also, it can be used for image or video processing, generating thumbnails, transaction code, video, and other image filter, right, as soon as you upload a file, right? So those kind of scenario we use it. So as we have mentioned that generating thumbnail for updated images, like uploading a long file, right? For example, you are having a job portal where multiple user upload this file, and then further you do the analysis on those files, or take some time to upload it. So upload into database or convert into different format. You just upload those file to a particular blob storage, and then start processing CSV files. Some of the application supports uploading, most of the cases uploading CSV files, which later they use for data ingestion into the system, like creating multiple records or uploading user information. In those kind of scenarios we can use it. And also transacting videos, uploading a blob storage. So this kind of scenario we can use blob storage. Event grid trigger is basically runs a function in response to event published on the Azure event grid. So whenever basically a event is published to Azure event grid, then this function will trigger, right? So in that case, whenever you want to perform some action based on the event received by event grid trigger, we can use it. Okay, so common use cases for is that event driven workflow, like serverless event processing when you are doing it, and then also basically you do integration with various Azure services. So for example, let's say consider in the event driven workflow, you want to create a complex workflow that respond a various event across Azure services, right? In that case, we can use it. Serverless event processing means it's handle events in a scalable serverless manner, right? And integration with Azure service means automate task based on the event from Azure storage, right? Resource manager and more. Okay, so these are the real time scenario when we can consider the event grid trigger. So we will try to understand signal or trigger. It runs a function in response to a message to send to Azure signal or service. Signal are used for real time web functionalities. For example, let's say consider, right, you use real time messaging two way communications for a web application or mobile application. Uh, you use signal. Or for example, you are having a file upload option, right? And when a file, you, let's say it's a huge file, right, in MBs, right, let's say 100 MB or something like that. When you upload it, then you use signaler to inform to end user or client or web browser user that this file is uploaded and processed successfully. So in those kind of scenario, use signaler. So in this case, what you'll do that when you have a long running process which requires a right message to be sent from the servers to client side. In that case, we will using Singular. So in real time notification, most of the cases Singular are used for real time notification, as I mentioned, file upload, download, data processing completed, right? And also WebSocket based application, chat applications, right? These are this kind of common use cases. So let's say consider example scenario, sending real time update to a web application, like building a live chat feature, real time dashboard kind of things. It can be used, right? So for example, send update to a web application in the real time, such as live data feeds. WebSocket applications basically build interactive application that need real time communication, like chat app, all right, and data processing status and all like this. We can use it. Let's move to the next, and is basically last one. So send grid trigger, basically it runs a function when a new email is sent to an Azure send grid, right? Send grid, as we know that send grid is used for sending email and attachment kind of information. Using send grid, we do that. So for example, it's a commonly used, basically use email processing, email automation, right? Notification through email whenever you are sending, right? Communication workflow, for example, if you are having a chain of processes to be handled in application, and each step you want to update to the consumer or end user that your this transaction is in this stage. So those kind of scenario, we use this send grid triggers where you want to send email or email bit attachment or something like that. So example scenario, right, sending welcome emails or new user, processing incoming support email, and automating email notification. So I hope I try to explain at very high level what are these trigger and what are the real time use cases for this. Uh, in future, I am planning to create a real time example uh, using C sharp and emulators for blob and Cosmos DB, and I will create some videos where we will discuss for each triggers in more detail, uh, 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 to understand in more detail. I hope you like what you see. If you like what you see, please subscribe my channel.